We say Kol HaKavod before we move on to our congregant choir member, Michael Winnikoff, not only for his leadership and contributions to our community, but for writing that setting for Oseh Shalom that we just heard. Kol HaKavod, and thank you. We look forward to hearing more of your music tomorrow. One day, Taylor decided to build something new, something special, something amazing. Taylor was so proud. But then, out of nowhere, things came crashing down. The chicken was the first to notice. Cluck, cluck. You try making a chicken noise. Cluck, cluck, what a shame. I'm so sorry this happened. Let's talk about it. Cluck, cluck, cluck. But Taylor didn't feel like talking, so the chicken left. Next came the bear. Roar, 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 how horrible! I bet you feel so angry. Let's shout about it. Roar! But Taylor didn't feel like shouting, so the bear left. The elephant knew just what to do. Imagine an elephant noise. I can fix this, said the elephant. We just need to remember exactly how it was before. But Taylor didn't feel like remembering, so the elephant left. One by one they came, the hyena laughing, let's laugh about it. The ostrich, let's hide and pretend nothing happened. The kangaroo, what a mess, let's throw it all away. And the snake, let's go knock down someone else's. But Taylor didn't feel like doing anything with anyone. So eventually they all left, until Taylor was alone. In the quiet, Taylor didn't even notice the rabbit, but it moved closer and closer until Taylor could feel its warm body. Together they sat in silence until Taylor said, "Please stay with me." The rabbit listened. The rabbit listened as Taylor talked. The rabbit listened as Taylor shouted. The rabbit listened as Taylor remembered and laughed. The rabbit listened to Taylor's plans to hide, to throw everything away, to ruin things for someone else. Through it all, the rabbit never left. And when the time was right, the rabbit listened to Taylor's plans to build again. "I can't wait," said Taylor. "It's going to be amazing." I read this book called The Rabbit Listened to the USY board at their leadership and planning retreat at the beginning of the year. We talked about how when we care about someone, we want to fix their problems. And when someone shares a story or experience with us, our natural instinct is to relate to them, to share of ourselves in our reply. And we talked about how that's often the wrong response. How listening lovingly, listening actively, listening productively, usually, actually, means saying very little, if anything at all. It means validating, saying, "I hear you," or "that sounds really hard." So often we are the chicken. I know I'd want to talk about it, so let's talk about it. Or we're the bear. That would make me so mad. Let's be mad about it. Or we're a reflection of Taylor. That happened to me too. Here's what I did. But as caring friends, as family members, as people committed to building community in any form, it's important that we strive to be the rabbit, to sit with people in their feelings, to allow them space to process and express or not express their emotions on their own timeline, to follow their lead. So I worked on this with our teen leaders a couple months ago, who I have to say picked it up pretty well. We discussed and we role-played. What if one of your peers came to a lounge night or a youth group event and seemed sad or withdrawn? And they practiced these tools because that's really what they are, tools or techniques that we can learn that allow us to approach someone with curiosity and care, with no assumptions. When the teens were feeling pretty good about themselves and their active, caring listening, I dropped the bombshell. This isn't only necessary when someone is sad. It's also important when someone says something that's challenging to hear. The USY board members asked, "What do you mean, our wise and inspiring rabbi?" Don't know why you're laughing. I explained that we'd practiced sitting with a friend who got a bad grade, or whose dog had died, or whose family member was ill. But what about when someone says, USY sucks? Or I hate the programs here at Bethel? Or this is boring, this is no fun? Not sadness, but conflict. Not grief, but hurtful words. In those moments too, it's important to ignore our immediate response of, no, you suck. Instead, we have to find a way to say, I'm sorry to hear that, or that sounds hard, or tell me more, what do you mean? We don't need to agree, but we do need to hear them. As you can imagine, this is true for all of us, not only youth group board members. In fact, perhaps it's the case this year more than before that we've heard challenging statements and difficult discourse coming our way. In this election season, we've certainly heard things that we deeply believe to be wrong. As we think about how Israel is portrayed in the media, I know we feel ourselves itching to join the conversation, to add our 2 cents, whether rushing to agree or disagree. Or perhaps the most hurtful thing I've heard said in recent days, when someone tells me that the Vikings cannot keep up their pace this season. When we care about a relationship, or at least when we care about building and being part of a community, it's important that we learn how to listen fully and openly. This means attempting to understand instead of trying to be heard, listening and processing instead of pushing our own agenda, whether we disagree or agree with what is being said. We often listen only to ourselves as someone else is talking, as we prepare in our mind what we're going to say, the questions we're going to ask, and often it ends up that we decide on a response before someone is even done talking. Of course, this is not malicious. It's only because we care so deeply about a person or a topic that we try so hard to relate in this way by adding our own voices to the discussion. But it's important, deeply, desperately, direly, fundamentally important that before that we simply listen. And I invite us to practice this. It'll feel like our conversations are really slowing down, like they're dragging, but it affords us the opportunity to hear the entirety of what our friends, family, neighbors are telling us, to be really present, to listen with no assumptions. How would our relationships change at home, at shul, on Facebook, out and about in the world if we didn't feel the pressure to respond immediately? What would it feel like to commit to asking questions when someone is upset and when someone says something upsetting? What if instead of working on a response while they're talking, we dedicated ourselves to listening, hearing the full sentence that someone is telling us? What if we committed to being the rabbit? I think we'd find a lot more common ground and realize that we share many values with the people around us, many hopes and goals. We give ourselves the opportunity to learn a little more about the people around us, maybe even grow together with them. And importantly, we'd be able to live productively, safely, in a diverse community. This kind of listening creates space for conversation that is not competition, disagreement that is not existential. There will be times when we are the chicken, the bear, the hyena, the elephant. Either purposely or unintentionally. We'll slip up, or maybe we'll feel like a boundary has been crossed or that we need to set a boundary, and we'll react. But I think that as a general rule, those animals are lonely, and they're isolated. They have the opportunity to be there for Taylor, but they're unable to set aside their own needs and put Taylor first. They don't take the time to listen. They don't seek to understand. And so I think those animals probably live in relationship with just a few others who are like them, which on the surface doesn't sound so bad. The rabbit seeks to understand, though, before being understood. The rabbit's instinctual response is not, "I know what to do," or "I know what to say," but "let me learn more." This approach allows trust to be built between the pair, and we need to be able to trust. We also need patience, grace, and forgiveness to be in relationship. Not only forgiveness like we usually think about it on Yom Kippur. We generally think about forgiveness, forgiving those who have hurt us, or seeking forgiveness from those who we have harmed. In the traditional way of thinking about it, forgiveness is something that happens after the fact, as tikkun, as repair. But there's also forgiveness that we show up with. We show up with forgiveness by thinking, "I know we're going to disagree on this thing, but I'm going to sit with you anyway. I can see that you're upset, and I'm going to stay here with you. We're not aligned on this, but I'm not going to throw the relationship out because of it. Because of this communal project, because we're family, or because we want to exist together, or whatever reason, I'm going to try hard to be here for you in the way that you need." At times it's obvious what a person needs. Maybe because they shout it at us. Maybe because they send us a long email detailing what they need. Maybe we arrive and see a tower in broken pieces on the floor. At other times, we have to really work through it. We have to ask questions, listen to their words, and to the silence between the words. This is reflected in another High Holiday theme, which is the Kol D'mama. Throughout our High Holiday liturgy, including tomorrow, we will say, "Uv shofar gadol yitaka, v'kol d'mama daka yishama." And the great shofar sounded, and a still, small voice was heard. This phrase, "Kol d'mama daka," is a reference to a story about Eliyahu, the prophet Elijah, who goes out seeking God, seeking the divine. Elijah ends up in a cave where he spends the night, and God asks, "Why are you here?" Elijah responds, "That I'm seeking God's presence." The verse says that just then a great and mighty wind passed by, splitting the mountains and shattering the rocks by the power of God. Ruach gedolah v'chazak mefares harim u'mishaber slaim lifnei Adonai. But God was not in the wind, lo v'ruach Adonai. After the wind, an earthquake, but God was not in the earthquake, lo bara'ash Adonai. After the earthquake, there was a fire, but God was not in the fire, lo ba'esh Adonai. After the fire, a still, small, whispering voice was heard. Ve'achar ha'esh kol d'mama daka. When Elijah heard the voice, He wrapped himself in his garments, went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. A voice addresses him again, saying, "Why are you here, Elijah?" And Elijah knew God. The repetition of the kol damama language and reference throughout our Yom Kippur liturgy reminds us of the importance of listening. Not every message will come in earth-shattering wind or fire or the cry of the shofar. Not every connection point, not every meaningful word will be loud or obvious or in our faces. Frequently, we have to work through all of that to get to the point. We often get distracted by the noise. We rush to judgment, to solutions, to conclusions. We want to fix it to make it better or present an argument. But true listening is done in silence, in focus, with attention and care. I found it hard to be the rabbit this year. I'm not sure, again, if it's our political landscape that's made everything just feel fraught, or maybe it started after October 7th. But I feel like I show up in conversations and interactions with a lot of assumptions and with little patience. I find myself looking for clues as others talk, trying to figure out what opinions or beliefs might be underneath their words. Instead of listening, I'm searching. I'm building my case and response if I get the sense that we disagree. Or I'm nodding, thanking God, interrupting with examples if we're aligned. None of these responses are examples of active listening, of caring listening. Now, I do think it's reasonable to feel this way. I don't blame myself, I don't blame any of us for feeling this way. It feels safe, and particularly this year when there is a lot of garbage out there, when we feel very isolated. It feels like we should be guarding ourselves so we don't get hurt. But ultimately, we do ourselves and our community no favors through this kind of half listening. Instead, we should strive to be the rabbit. We should show up with love and care, and when we can't muster that, at the very least, curiosity. The difficult work of building our world into all the things we want it to be starts between me and you, starts in conversation and with our willingness to truly listen. Listen not to respond, not to be right, not even to figure out how we can help or how we can fix things, but listen for the sake of listening. Through our actions and our words this year, and for all the times we decide not to speak at all, may we be sealed in the book of life. Gemar Chatima Tova.